Welcome to this deep dive.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So today we're going to be exploring Hymn 26. And you know what's fascinating about this poem is how it tackles these huge universal themes. Like life, death.
Right.
The stuff we all think about.
Yeah.
In a way that feels incredibly relevant, even though it's from, well, let's just say a very long time ago.
I see.
I'm really curious to see what we uncover as we go through it together.
It is remarkable how a poem from so far in the past can still speak to us so directly.
Right.
It suggests that the core human experience, our search for meaning and purpose, hasn't really changed.
And it starts off so boldly.
Yeah.
The poet claims to speak the truth in a language everyone can understand with unity of thought.
Wow.
That kind of clarity is something I think we all crave, especially these days.
Yeah.
When everything feels so fragmented.
It's a powerful statement about the importance of communication. We live in a world saturated with information.
Right.
But finding that true understanding, that connection with others can still feel elusive.
I agree.
The poet seems to be calling for a return to a shared language of truth.
For sure.
Which I think is something we really need right now.
Totally, especially when you think about how divisive everything feels these days.
Oh, yeah.
And then the poem goes on to say, do not consider anyone as an enemy. Wow. O world, after all, are connected as family.
That's powerful.
Isn't that a radical thought?
It is a challenging idea.
I mean, that idea feels almost utopian.
For sure.
Given all the conflict we see around us.
But imagine if we could actually embrace that perspective.
Yeah.
If we could see past our differences, whether political, religious, or cultural, and truly recognize our shared humanity.
I see.
It makes you wonder if that could be a pathway to a more peaceful future.
It really does make you think.
It does.
But then the poem kind of shifts gears and brings us face to face with something we all have to confront eventually.
Okay.
Death.
Right.
The poet states that both the learned and the ignorant perish in the same way. That's deep.
You know, I was reading this the other day, and it really stopped me in my tracks.
Yeah.
That idea of the great equalizer can be pretty unsettling.
It is a stark reminder of our mortality.
Yeah.
And while that can feel daunting at first, it can also be an invitation to live more intentionally.
I see.
If we know that our time is finite, how do we want to spend it?
Right.
What truly matters?
Yeah.
What legacy do we want to leave behind?
Those are big questions, but I think you're right. It's about finding that sense of purpose.
I think so.
Then digging even deeper into this concept of impermanence.
Okay.
The poem says that all causes eventually lead to dissolution.
Right.
For me, this phrase dissolution brought up a sense of unease, like things falling apart, disappearing.
Okay.
I'm curious, what are your thoughts on dissolution in this context?
It is a thought-provoking word. It's easy to feel overwhelmed by that sense of constant change and uncertainty.
For sure.
Especially with how fast the world seems to be moving these days.
Right. Think about it.
Okay.
Technology rapidly evolving.
Yeah.
Jobs changing. Societal norms shifting. It can feel like everything we know is constantly dissolving into something new.
That constant flux can be unsettling.
Yeah.
So much of our lives is built around stability and predictability.
Right.
So confronting the reality that everything eventually dissolves is a bit like pulling the rug out from under you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's precisely the point the poet is trying to make by acknowledging this universal truth of impermanence. Perhaps we can learn to let go of our attachments to things that are fleeting and focus on what truly endures.
Okay, that makes sense. But there's this other intriguing idea.
Yeah.
Right alongside death and dissolution.
Okay.
The impact of faith.
Interesting.
That line really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Do you think the poet is specifically talking about religious faith here? Or could it be something broader?
That's a great question, and I think it's open to interpretation. Okay. On one hand, it certainly speaks to the power of belief systems.
Right. In
providing comfort and guidance in the face of death.
Yeah.
But on a deeper level, it could also be about the faith we place in ourselves, in our values, in something bigger than ourselves.
I see.
Maybe it's about finding that inner compass that helps us navigate the uncertainty of life.
That resonates with me.
Yeah.
Like, even though things are constantly changing, having that inner sense of faith, of grounding, can be incredibly steadying.
Absolutely. It gives us a framework for understanding our experiences and making choices that are aligned with our deepest values, even amidst the inevitable dissolution of things around us.
So we've talked about death, dissolution, and faith.
It's a lot to absorb.
It is a lot to absorb.
But the poem doesn't leave us hanging there.
Right.
There's also this beautiful idea of finding peace.
Yeah.
In the midst of all this.
Love that.
The poet suggests that accepting impermanence with a tranquil mind
can actually lead to a deeper understanding.
I love that idea. But cultivating tranquility in our busy, often chaotic lives can feel so challenging.
You're right. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Tranquility is a practice, not a destination. It involves becoming more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations without judgment.
I see.
It's about learning to find moments of stillness.
Yeah.
Amidst the constant noise and demands of our world.
I can definitely relate to that feeling of needing to find more stillness.
For sure.
It's so easy to get caught up in the whirlwind of everything.
Right.
And lose that sense of inner peace.
Absolutely.
But the poem goes even further.
Okay.
It's incredibly introspective.
Right.
It poses this really thought-provoking question. I do not know whether it is your own mind or the mind influenced by desires that leads you.
Interesting.
That line stopped me in my tracks. Because it's something I think we all struggle with.
Yeah.
Right?
It is trying to figure out if we're acting from our true selves or just being pulled in a million directions by our desires.
It's a question that gets to the heart of self-awareness. We often operate on autopilot,
right,
reacting to the world around us without really examining the motivations behind our choices.
For sure.
The poet is encouraging us to pause and reflect on what's truly driving us.
I know, I've definitely had those moments where I'm like, wait a minute, why am I even doing this? This doesn't feel right.
I hear you.
It's like there's this internal struggle between what I genuinely want and what I feel pressure to do.
Yeah.
Whether it's from societal expectations, work demands, or even just the fear of missing out.
Exactly. And that's where the poem's invitation to cultivate a tranquil mind becomes even more crucial.
I see.
When we can create that space for stillness and introspection,
right,
we can start to distinguish between the voice of our true selves and the often louder voice of our desires.
That's a powerful insight.
Yeah.
But how can we practically apply that in our everyday lives?
That's the question.
How can we better differentiate between those two voices, the authentic self and the desires pulling us in different directions?
It starts with paying attention.
Okay.
With becoming more aware of our thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations. Notice when you feel a sense of ease or resistance in a particular situation.
Right.
Ask yourself, what is truly motivating me in this moment?
I like that.
Journaling can be a helpful tool for exploring these internal conflicts.
Okay.
Talking things through with a trusted friend or therapist can also provide valuable insights.
That makes sense.
It's a process of self-discovery, really.
Yeah.
And I think the poem offers some guidance on that journey.
Okay.
Remember that line about following the right path?
Oh, yeah?
It says, if you follow the right path, you can transcend all obstacles.
I love that image of transcending obstacles.
Yeah.
It makes me think about those times when I've felt stuck or lost. It's like even in those difficult moments, there's this possibility of finding a way forward, a path that leads us through the darkness.
Yeah.
But the poem doesn't actually define what the right path is, does it? It leaves it open to interpretation.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It invites each of us to discover our own right path.
Okay.
The path that resonates with our values, our purpose, our deepest sense of self.
So what does that even look like?
Well, maybe it's about aligning our actions with our intentions, or perhaps it's about finding a way to live a life that feels authentic and meaningful.
That makes me think about those moments when we're faced with a decision.
Yeah.
And we have to choose between what's easy and what feels right.
Right.
Even if it's the harder path.
It's like the poem is reminding us to trust our intuition, to listen to that inner voice that guides us towards what truly aligns with who we are.
So cultivating that inner compass.
Exactly. And I think that's where the idea of faith comes in again. It's not just about believing in something outside of ourselves, but also about having faith in our own ability to navigate the challenges and uncertainties of life.
It's like that saying, leap in the net will appear.
I like that.
Maybe it's not so much about knowing the exact path ahead of time,
right,
but more about trusting that we'll find our way as we go.
Okay.
That the path will reveal itself as we take those steps forward.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Thanks.
And I think the poem supports that idea.
Okay.
It encourages us to embrace the journey, to trust the process of unfolding, knowing that we have the inner resources to overcome whatever obstacles we encounter.
And ultimately, it seems like that journey is about finding liberation.
Yeah.
The poem concludes with this powerful declaration. My path is the one that leads to liberation, the true spiritual path. That line always sends chills down my spine. What a way to end the poem.
Yeah.
But I've always wondered, what exactly does liberation mean in this context? It's such a big, loaded word.
It is a powerful word, isn't it? And I think it speaks to a deep longing we all have.
Okay.
To be free from suffering from limitations, from the things that hold us back from living our fullest lives. In a sense, it's about finding that inner freedom.
Right.
That allows us to experience joy, peace, and fulfillment regardless of our external circumstances.
That resonates with me.
Yeah.
It's like true liberation isn't about escaping from life or our responsibilities,
right,
but about finding a way to live more fully and authentically, even amidst the challenges and uncertainties that are an inevitable part of the human experience.
Exactly. It's about embracing the wholeness of life with all its joys and sorrows, and finding a way to live in harmony with ourselves and the world around us.
That's a beautiful way to think about it.
Thanks.
Like finding that sense of inner peace that allows us to weather the storms and appreciate the sunshine.
I like that.
As we've been talking about this poem, I've been thinking about how these ancient words can feel so incredibly relevant to our modern lives. It's like even though the world has changed so much, the fundamental questions about life, death, and our search for meaning are still the same.
It's a testament to the enduring power of these timeless truths, isn't it?
Yeah, the poem speaks to something deep within us, something that transcends time and culture.
Okay.
It reminds us that we're not alone in our struggles, our doubts, our search for meaning.
That's so reassuring.
It is.
And I think that's what makes this poem so powerful.
Yeah.
It's not just offering us a set of answers.
Right.
But it's inviting us to engage in a conversation, to explore these big questions for ourselves and discover our own truths.
Exactly. It's a call to awaken to the richness and complexity of life.
Okay.
To embrace the journey with curiosity and courage. And to trust that even in the midst of impermanence, there's a path that leads us towards liberation.
It really does feel like a timeless conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you know, as we've been talking, I've been making some connections between the poem's ideas and my own life.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny how these ancient words can spark such personal reflections.
That's the magic of these kinds of texts, isn't it? They act as mirrors, reflecting back our own experiences and helping us see things in a new light.
Yeah.
What stood out to you in particular? Well, that idea of dissolution really got me thinking.
Okay.
It's like, yeah, we know on an intellectual level that everything changes, nothing stays the same. But actually feeling that truth, realizing that even the things we hold most dear are impermanent, that could be a tough pill to swallow.
Right.
Lately, I've been feeling that anxiety around my career. It's a field that's constantly evolving, and I find myself wondering if I'll be able to keep up.
Yeah.
If everything I've worked for will just become obsolete.
It's a valid concern, especially in a world that feels increasingly fast-paced and uncertain.
Yeah.
And I think the poem offers a way to navigate that anxiety.
Okay, how so?
It's not about denying the reality of change, but rather about shifting our perspective. Instead of clinging to things that are fleeting, perhaps we can find a sense of peace in the process of change itself.
That's an interesting way to think about it.
Yeah.
Instead of resisting the current, learning to ride the waves.
Exactly.
But that brings up another question for me.
Okay.
If everything is in a state of constant flux, if things are always dissolving, what does that mean for building a meaningful life?
Right.
How do we create something lasting when everything seems so temporary?
That's where the poem's emphasis on the right path and liberation becomes so important.
Wow.
It's not about creating something that will last forever in a material sense.
Right.
Instead, maybe it's about aligning our actions with our values, about making choices that contribute to something bigger than ourselves.
I see.
Maybe it's about cultivating qualities like love, compassion, and wisdom.
Yeah.
Things that transcend the physical realm and leave a lasting impact on the world.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it's not about building monuments that will stand the test of time, but about the kind of energy we put out into the world, like the kind of impact we have on others. It's about leaving the world a little brighter, a little kinder than we found it. That feels really powerful.
It is powerful, isn't it? And I think that's what the poem is ultimately pointing us towards. It's about finding that sense of purpose, that alignment with something greater than ourselves, that gives our lives meaning even amidst the constant change and dissolution.
It's about recognizing that even though we're all on our own individual journeys, we're all interconnected, part of something much larger than ourselves.
Exactly.
That brings us back to that beautiful line about seeing everyone as family, doesn't it? It's like, even though we're all unique individuals navigating our own paths, we're ultimately all in this together.
We are.
This deep dive into Hymn 26 has been a truly profound experience. It's given me so much to think about, so many new perspectives to consider.
It has.
I feel like I'm walking away with a renewed sense of purpose and a deeper appreciation for the beauty and complexity of life.
I feel the same way. It's amazing how a poem written so long ago can still speak to us with such relevance and power.
Right.
And I think that's a testament to the enduring nature of the human spirit, our constant search for meaning and connection.
And to our listeners, we encourage you to explore Hymn 26 for yourself. Read it slowly. Let its words wash over you and see what resonates with you. What personal reflections does it spark? What new insights emerge? We'd love to hear your thoughts and interpretations. Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, keep diving deep.